The Bible predicts the end of Israel. Up to 3 times, and that's it. The Jews were to fall into such serious trouble 3 times that they would cease to be free men. The first instance was prophetically foretold to Abram. Genesis 15 verses 13 to 14. Then the Lord said to Abram, "Know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs and will be servants there, and they will be afflicted for 400 years. But I will bring judgment on the nation that they serve, and afterward they shall come out with great possessions." God foretold not only the captivity, but also its duration and announced its end. These are important details because they show their way of dealing with the nation of Israel. The Creator allowed certain trials, but always gave hope so that His nation would not lose heart. They knew that this was a transitional period and they did not have to fight rebellions for freedom because everything happened according to God's plan. Indeed, after 400 years, the Israelites regained their freedom. At the time Abraham's descendants emigrate to Egypt, there are only a dozen or so of them plus their families. These dozen or so committed a serious offense by selling their brother into slavery and deceiving their father that his son had been devoured by a wild animal. They were driven to this by jealousy. The older brothers were irritated by their father's love for young Joseph. The later captivity was a consequence of this. If we assume that this was the reason for the Egyptian captivity, the third captivity will have a very similar reason, but its course will be much more drastic. We can treat all the events of that time as prophetic shadows of future events related to God's Anointed One. The second captivity was also announced in advance and its duration was also determined in advance. Jeremiah 29 verse 10. For thus says the Lord, when 70 years are completed for Babylon, I will visit you, and I will fulfill to you my promise and bring you back to this place. The second captivity was shorter because it ended after 70 years, but it was more cruel. The reason for the captivity was also very serious because the unfaithful Israelites committed the worst sins that can be imagined. Jeremiah 32 verses 34 to 35. They set up their abominations in the house that is called by my name, to defile it. They built the high places of Baal in the valley of the son of Hinnom, to offer up their sons and daughters to Moloch, though I did not command them, nor did it enter into my mind, that they should do this abomination, to cause Judah to sin. God forewarned early what would happen, set a time for the end of the punishment, and swore to it that it would happen. Unfortunately, Israel was not ready to return. Some 40 years after the return from Babylon, Malachi proclaims. Malachi 3 verses 7 to 9. From the days of your fathers you have turned aside from my statutes and have not kept them. Return to me, and I will return to you, says the Lord of hosts. But you say, how shall we return? Will man rob God? Yet you are robbing me. But you say, how have we robbed you? In your tithes and contributions. You are cursed with a curse, for you are robbing me, the whole nation of you. It is interesting that at about the same time the demons created or intensified, as if on one plan, a multitude of new religions, Buddhism, Jainism, Zoroastrianism, Taoism, etc. At the same time the Israelites returning from exile created Judaism. What came before could be called Mosaicism based on the Old Testament and mainly on the writings of Moses, while Judaism was based on the oral interpretations of the Pharisees which were eventually written down and today we know as the Talmud. This version of Judaism is heard in Malachi when the unfaithful Israelites pretend that they are doing nothing wrong. Judaism was an apostasy, which is why Malachi calls out in God's name. Return to me. As we know, Israel did not convert. On the contrary, it created such an effective system to combat the prophets that after Malachi for 500 years until John the Baptist no prophet or new books were recognized. How is that possible? After all, at that moment there was supposed to be a rebirth of pure worship. At that time, the Jewish version of the Holy Inquisition was created. Judaism killed all the prophets who revealed themselves and destroyed their books. Matthew 23 verses 31 to 37. Thus you witness against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up, then, the measure of your fathers. You serpents, you brood of vipers, how are you to escape being sentenced to hell? Therefore I send you prophets and wise men and scribes, some of whom you will kill and crucify, and some you will flog in your synagogues and persecute from town to town, so that on you may come all the righteous blood shed on earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah the son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the sanctuary and the altar. Truly, I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it! How often would I have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. And so we come to another announcement of punishment. The punishment was to be borne by the entire nation except those who would believe and obey Christ. Yeshua gave his followers clear instructions on how to avoid the consequences of destruction and death. Matthew 24 verses 15 to 16. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Just as before, this time Israel was warned of the impending destruction. This time, however, it was different. Christ announced the punishment, but did not announce its end. The nation of Israel cannot have any hope for the end of the punishment and a return to favor with the true God. Israel, which would like to persist in its old beliefs, cannot do so without a temple, and no one dares to build one. Although a Jewish state called Israel was established in Palestine, its power is actually dependent on the current world power, the USA. Since the return from Babylonian captivity, Israel has been a fiction of a true state, which is why it is called a beast in the book of Revelation, whose heads are the rulers of the world powers. It is only on these heads that the great harlot sits, i.e. the sect of apostate Jews. The Jewish state will be a beast until the rightful ruler, namely Yeshua, the anointed one of God, sits on its throne. The current government is not rightful from God's point of view. Since Christ revealed to the Israelites how to avoid punishment, it actually fell only on those who were hardened and on the city itself, as the center of the great cult. In this sense, the city has not come back to life to this day. The true Israel today are the servants of the Anointed One, and we know what will happen and what the end will be. Soon Jerusalem will once again become the center to which representatives of all nations will flow to pay homage to the Creator. Revelation 15 verse 4. Before this happens, there will be a war, after which the USA will cease to be a world power and its place will be taken, for a short time, by a Jewish state supported by other states. Revelation 17 verses 11 to 13. As for the beast, Israel, that was and is not, it was gone between years 70 and 1948, it is an eighth, must defeat the seventh, but it belongs to the seven, and it goes to destruction. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power. These countries did not exist yet, probably the EU, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour, together with the beast. These are of one mind, and they hand over their power and authority to the beast. It is already clear today that everyone supports Israel. This means that Russia and China will not emerge victorious from the war conflict either. The US, even if it wins the war, will be so weak that it will be enough to destroy Babylon the Great, on which its economy is based, to finish off this power and take its place. Revelation 17 verse 16. And the 10 horns that you saw, possibly EU countries, they and the beast, Israel, will hate the prostitute. They will make her desolate and naked, and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire. This war will be exceptionally catastrophic in its consequences since little Israel, the beast of Revelation, will become a world power. However, the Bible predicts that this will happen for a very short while because the Jewish state will get entangled in the conflict with Christ and then nothing will help it. It will come to its end. Revelation 17 verse 14. They will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those with him are called and chosen and faithful. So there were 3 penalties and now it will be over. Luke 21 verse 28. Now when these things begin to take place, straighten up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. Don't delay until then. Fulfill the conditions of salvation and receive immersion in the name of Yeshu today. Write to me. If you have made it to the end, write in comments, read this.